Hey everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. I want to talk about my journey to OCD recovery, everything in between that happened to me, where I'm at now, where I was 4 years ago, what held me back, and everything else in between. This is going to be a little bit longer of a video. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of my life, all the things I notice now, all the reasons why we don't want to dive into our past and why our childhood doesn't really matter outside of acknowledging things. This goes for anything in our lives, no matter the event. The only thing we can do is really acknowledge things in our life if they've happened. And if it's with OCD and you have real event, false memory, you're never going to be able to get certainty on those things. So moving with that uncertainty and breaking it down with acceptance is so key, and everything else. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know what you think about this video. If you enjoy these type of videos, I think it's really good when all the moderators do long historical videos talking about everything, talking about their ups and downs and everything, all the challenges that they face to where they are today. And if you're interested in our coaching and webinar services, please email us at info@ocdrecovery.com. So the first thing I want to talk about is probably the most important thing when it comes to OCD. Now, most people, if they work hard, can go to med school. Most people, if they work hard, can become a professional of any sorts, and they can achieve many things in their life. Yes, there's a lot of luck involved, market timing, and all sorts of stuff. OCD is not something you can buy. OCD is not something that you can experience because you think you can mimic it. I've heard stuff like this on OCD podcasts. Oh, I thought about my saliva for 3 minutes and gave myself sensory motor. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. And really detrimental to hear that in the community. Now, I know these people and the people out there are really trying to help. But the hardest thing to accept is there's certain things in life that are highly predicated off experience that trump everything else. And OCD recovery is that. I don't say this too often because it can be very controversial, but more than likely, the best advice on OCD is coming from the people who have lived it and experienced it. Just like someone who's built a massive business gives the best business advice next to a teacher who hasn't owned their own business, and a person who's owned a plumbing company, then someone who understands plumbing textbook and schematics, and yeah, all that stuff is very important. But OCD recovery just works in a very, very different manner. It's so methodical, it's so shape-shifting, it's so real feeling that I can't see how anyone who hasn't experienced it fully come out the other side wouldn't give more than likely the best advice. Now, a lot of people who come out the other side do not want to help OCD sufferers, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is a very taxing disorder. It takes a lot of energy. There's a lot of doubts. A lot of people end up in really dark places and feeling lonely. It's really important to talk about this. And this is just the reality of life. People don't like talking about realities anymore. I've always used this, and I think it's really important. In life, we have this line, and this line is the realities of life. So what's close to this line, right? Things aren't fair. People don't need to respect us. We don't need to be heard. We don't need to be successful. We don't need to have money. We don't need to recover from OCD. We don't need to find the one, since there's no such thing as one. What happens is the more we travel outside this line, society isn't even living here. They're living out here. And the reason why we have so many problems with mental disturbances, neuroses, and I'm not just talking about mental health disorders. I'm talking about everything else, all the irrational beliefs, is because we're living way out here. So what's out here? Let's go to a new sticky note. Out here in the ether is the belief that life should be fair, that people owe us things, that the world needs to be a safe place, that there's inherently safe spaces. We deserve this. Self-esteem is real. All these things that don't make a lot of sense once they're broken down philosophically. Now, we can believe in many things. Like me, for myself, I'm an atheist. I believe when you die, nothing happens. That is a belief. Now, there's nothing wrong with holding religious beliefs. There's nothing wrong with believing in the one. It's the demand about them that gets you into trouble. It's the I know for a fact there's the one out there. And I say, prove it. And you can't. You can't prove it. Many other things like that are holding people back. I wanted to open up this video with that. This is something I like talking about a lot, and it really is hard for me to talk about because we hear stuff as thoughts are thoughts. Just go with that in when you're out the other. Use mantras all day long. Use breathing techniques and grounding techniques. And there's a time and place for many things, but OCD is not that simple. It's resilient. It's strong. It doesn't want to give up. It doesn't want to go down. The fear wants to persist. It wants to keep you safe. Everything that we thought we knew about OCD and anxiety recovery up until the last 5 to 10 years wasn't everything that was needed, because we never saw long-term recovery cases where people were saying, hey, look, I'm feeling really good, but I got to maintain these routines every day. I got to do 3 breathing meditations a day and all this stuff. I see this all day long when I coach people. And I see this all day long with people I'm friends with. I was looking at a post recently where someone was going over their morning hour ritual, where they have to journal, they have to ground themselves. You don't got to do any of that shit. The only thing you got to do is breathe, eat, sleep, and drink water. And some of those are, you can even philosophically debate against them if you didn't want to do anything and not be here anymore, if you wanted to opt out of life. Which I don't think is a good option anyway, no matter how bad you're suffering, because you probably only have one life, so you might as well try to make the best of it. So when I was a child, I had a plethora of avoidance behaviors. I ate the same foods until I was about 8. I ate, it sounds crazy, peanut butter, crackers, and cheese, like grilled cheese sandwiches. Being from New Jersey, I don't think I ate pizza until I was 11, and I was really adamant about that, coming from an Italian family. And I was a compulsive liar. I lied a lot, more than probably the average kid. I lied a lot up until I was in my mid-20s because I was afraid of being wrong. I wanted to look the smartest. I wanted to fabricate my life. So I always had a problem with self-esteem. And because I thought self-esteem was what you needed. I thought you needed to lie to make yourself look good. That's the definition of self-esteem. I must do X in order to have Y. I must have money to accept myself. I must buy a boat to be accepted by my friends. Where the answers to life's problems, the majority of them, lie in our philosophical understanding of unconditional self-life other acceptance. I'm not going to go into too deep about that in this video, but you can find more information on that on our 1,000+ videos, acceptance playlist on this channel, our website, ocdrecovery.com, underneath the resource tab, my personal Instagram, which is a guy who hikes, one word, a guy who hikes, Rob's OCDrecovery.com, so it should be ocdrecovery.com, but we just put ocdrecovery.com. Both of our Instagrams, we post, our Instagrams alone, we probably do 200 to 300 posts a month, YouTube videos. We try to make as much content as we can. And there's nothing as good, in my opinion, as personalized coaching or webinar services, because everyone is very unique. 15 different ROCD sufferers can come in that I work with, and all 15 of them might have the fear of not being in love, but they all have individual different compulsions, individual subtle reassurance behaviors, individual situations that are unique to them that will need to be broken down. And it's very difficult to see that from the outside perspective when we're very blind and naive to the things that we usually have to work on, but we don't want it. As I grew up throughout school, again, I got in a lot of trouble when I was younger. I was arrested a lot. I always wanted to be the cool kid. I always was argumentative with authority. And for stupid stuff too, like arguing with police officers when I got pulled over for a speeding ticket, or just stuff like this. These are all things I did in my life. So I've had many opportunities in my life. I got my license suspended for a DUI when I was 23. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. I almost failed out of school a few times because I just didn't want to do the work. I remember one of my mom's favorite things to say is, Nicholas, the teachers always said Nicholas was not someone who got bad grades. He just didn't show up. I had a problem with authority because I thought I needed to prove myself over and over and over again to get to where I wanted to go. I got kicked out of public school when I was a freshman. The good old Mr. Gleason asked my parents, he told my parents, Nicholas will not be coming back to this school. And my mom said, what? And he said again, Nicholas will not be coming back to the school, because I was removed from the school. So I went to a private school for 3 years with a couple of my other friends who got kicked out of school as well. And we had this little posse. and we were a bunch of hoodlums. I smoked a pack of cigarettes per day for years. I dabbled in lots of hard drugs, and I've done a lot of things that I probably didn't need to do, but all these things have led to the perspectives I have now. So the problem is when things don't go wrong in one's life and they're not presented with challenges to overcome, they tend to cater more towards the comfort, which isn't inherently their fault. Life just works that way. There's a lot of random luck. A lot of things that we think are karma or meaning, they're not what we think they are. A lot of it is just randomized luck and neurons firing in our brains. This is where we can go into the stuff of free will. Like, I don't really think free will is really that substantial in our lives. I always use the pizza example. If you ask me if I like pizza, am I saying it from a genuine inspiration? Am I saying it because the neurons have now fired in my brain at microsecond, milli microseconds to bring up synapses and memories and tastes of pizza? And I say yes. I think it's more the second. I don't think we have nearly as much genuine inspiration as we think. I think it's more of a colliding factor and luck. I collided with Rob, and then now I collide with other people, and these randomized experiences. And there's probably some degree of free will, but I don't think it's as much as we think. It's really good for the existential crowd to hear. And then I got to grad school. Most people know I'm a chiro by trade. And when I got to grad school, I always wanted to be the best. I wanted people to think I was the smartest. I wanted to be the best in shape. I took anabolic steroids for a year, being from the Jersey Shore. And I always wanted to be that cool guy. So I always fabricated stories and lied a lot, and always wanted to be this like overgrowing character, which shut people down. I was so closed-minded, so angry, got into many fights, verbal and physical altercations throughout my life over like stuff that just didn't matter. It was very, very silly, stupid stuff. And then things started to go wrong. I had a rare vitamin deficiency, so just a little bit of a lesson. B vitamins are water soluble, which means they're not stored in your fat cells, adipocytes, so you need them on a daily basis. And each of them, biotin B7, the one which I was deficient in, I drank raw egg whites for 10 years. I would drink like 6 or 7 cartons. It had nothing to do with thinking it was better. They were cheaper than protein powder. It was a cost benefit, and I became so used to just drinking egg whites. But there is an enzyme called avidin, A-V-I-D-I-N, that doesn't, if you drink raw eggs, it doesn't allow biotin to be broken down your bloodstream. So I was biotin deficient, which is super, super rare. And I was having seizures, and I was having severe deja vu and memory loss. Anyone that's had a seizure knows right before you have a seizure, you have this crazy aura of deja vu, many people. And I knew something was wrong. I got a bunch of tests done, functional MRIs, EMGs, everything, nothing wrong with my brain. You guys, like, I don't even know what's going on. Then we found it was the biotin deficiency. I stopped drinking egg whites, and that solved all that, which was a very scary time in my life. My wife knows I had an attack in the bookstore, and when I was in the bookstore and had this attack, I forgot who I was. I forgot what my name was. My father was still dying of pancreatic cancer. I didn't know my dad's name. I didn't know what type of cancer he was. Now, leading up to when I had a seizure, my last one in class, then I lost my father to pancreatic cancer, and I never talked about my emotions. I buried it. My dad was that type of a guy. If you come from the Italian Northeast community, many people don't talk about their emotions. They bury their emotions and don't talk about them. New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, these are fast-paced moving places. You know, people always think, some areas in the world move fast. Listen, if you ever been to New York City, we move fast. We're outside of it. Everyone's like, and there's pros and cons to that. There's a lot more realness up there in the fact where if someone has a problem with you, they say it to your face, which I like. I think sometimes you go to certain areas and the cultures and everything like that, people are much more afraid to tell it how it is. I will always be someone that says it straight. I think straight, tough love is much more important. If I had to pick between, not in a black and white manner, but if I had to pick, if you were like, you need to pick tough love or compassion and empathy, I would pick tough love every day. It's not that compassion and empathy aren't important. They're very important. But usually tough love tends to be a little bit more important. Because then we get too much compassion, too much empathy, and then things don't get worked on. We stay problem focused, not solution focused. So my father died of pancreatic cancer, which is really tough. It's coming up on actually a year now. So I have the date tattooed on my wrist. It's March 28, 2018, so coming up here soon, it'll be 5 years since my dad died. And I was just really stressed and really anxious. I was coming towards the end of grad school after 3 years. I had national boards coming up, which was days long of testing and all this. I had lots of board review studies I had to do and everything like that. So I woke up in the middle of the night in June of 2019 with ringing in my ears that wouldn't go away. Now that spiraled the onset of OCD in my opinion. That's where my fear of tinnitus started. And I do have tinnitus in both my ears. I've been to numerous music festivals and that's really where that whole entire thing started. But that lasted for about 3 months. And inside of those 3 months, I went from provider to provider looking for the answers, looking for the keys to get out of tinnitus. Because I was so scared of noticing tinnitus for the remainder of my life, I thought, I got to escape this. So I went to audiologists compulsively. I watched every video on the American Tinnitus Association website. I was studying tinnitus all day long. And I came across a book called Rewiring Tinnitus, which there was a lot of good stuff in there. Now when I look back, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't that good because the person who wrote this book still had a great fear of tinnitus. That's why it was still prevalent. But they still had some really good principles saying, hey, look, your fear of tinnitus is what's going on, and that's good. As I started to recover from tinnitus, I was driving. I had a thought, what are some things you also habituate to? That famous word habituate. Hand on the steering wheel. Foot on the gas pedal. Blinking. Game over. Game over. Just all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. Panic attack. Boom, it was over. It was totally over from that point. I got back. I was laying on the ground, totally freaking out, having an absolute fucking meltdown like this on the ground of my apartment complex. Just, oh my God, what is going on to me? And just anyone knows that light switch moment, it can be really scary. And then that perpetuated my cycle. And from that moment, 2.5 months later, September, December, October, November, 3 months later, I was in the mental hospital for 4 days. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be here. I was highly suicidal. Now, if I knew what I knew now and met Rob before that, I probably wouldn't have gone. Most people do not end up in the mental hospital, but because I had no tools and I was so suicidal, my frustration tolerance was so low. That's where I ended up. I ended up in the mental hospital. So after the mental hospital, where I was misdiagnosed with bipolar, manic states, and I was very argumentative, after I got out of there, I spiraled into a full-blown depression for about 7 to 8 months. I was playing video games 80 hours a week. It almost ruined my marriage. My wife was about to leave me. Totally understandable. The fact she stuck around that long is absolutely incredible. I was very argumentative. I yelled a lot. I punched walls. I was just out of control. I would leave in the middle of the night. I was so stuck in the OCD cycle. Nobody who has not experienced OCD will ever understand that. We don't need anyone to understand that. But it is important that when people say, I do understand where you're coming from, they don't understand. They have no clue, no fucking clue what we're talking about. And that's harsh, but it's true. And it is important to highlight that because when we only take it from the people who haven't been there and they give great advice, a lot of great exposure advice and stuff like that, but the intricate details of why rumination is not primarily a compulsion. Yes, it can be analyzing a lot of its automatic symptoms from the core fear, why unconditional self-life, other acceptance will force OCD to morph and shift, trying to keep your attention. The deeper you get into the cycle, the intricate details is not something you can understand unless you suffered with OCD. It's just the way it is. I don't know what it's like to be born and raised in Ethiopia. I could read all the books on Ethiopia I want. I can know everything about the Ethiopian culture, but I'm not born and raised in Ethiopia, so I don't know as much as them. This is where unconditional acceptance comes in. Doesn't mean people can't help. I got to reiterate that, but it is really important to cover that. After I moved to Colorado, after I graduated school, things got bad. I was smoking 2 packs of Juul a day, e-cigarettes, playing video games, not going to work. I gained 50 pounds. I was really overweight. I was really, really big. I ate fast food all day long. A lot of people don't eat at all. I ate everything. I went the other way. And I had met Rob at this time. I had met Rob after I had worked with 3 to 4 different people who all told me different things. Again, they tried the best. Spit into a cup. Just don't think about it. Just don't ruminate. I'm like, this is all nonsense. None of this is working. Something else is going on. And my first session with Rob, he said to me straight out, And there was many people have the same story when they come and talk to me now, or when they talk to Rob or Momin, and they come to webinars and they say, or hear Jade speak, or Paul Little, or Alexander, or any people that do videos on the YouTube channel. He said, look, you have a fear of noticing your saliva and swallowing. That's what it was. I had switched from blinking to saliva and swallowing. You have a fear of noticing your saliva and swallowing for the remainder of your life. I said, yeah, that's it. He's like, that's it. You have to become comfortable with it over time. It's going to take you a couple of years to probably really do it. You'll make some severe progress in 3 to 6 months if you read the books on the reading list and do what you need to do. And I was already attuned with reading. I had been in school after high school for almost 8 years now, after high school. So I was good to go. I read all the books compulsively. I had to figure out with sensory motor specifically, there's not really a lot of exposures. The sensation itself is the exposure. So it's more about bringing down the avoidance behaviors, which are forms of compulsions. So it is, you can say it's an exposure, but it's not a direct exposure to the sensation. It's the fear about being stuck for the remainder of your life. I had to read all the books, like I said, and do all that stuff in time and patience. It morphed around. I had panic disorder. I had GAD. I had body dysmorphia. That was really, really bad, lingering for 10 years, which I was like, oh, this is going to go away, but it never did. And that leads me to where I am today, where I do, almost 100 coaching calls a month. I run the webinars. I make numerous YouTube videos and content. And I spend a large majority of my time helping and spreading OCD and anxiety awareness, changing philosophical beliefs. This goes way beyond this. I could work with someone who's worth $15 billion and they're having these really irrational beliefs about if I fail because they're attaching their self-worth. I can work with someone that is homeless and has no money whatsoever, and we could talk about perspectives. These perspectives are not just for OCD. This is the biggest myth out there. The other myth is that acceptance is a form of weakness. I hear this a lot from mainstream people in the psychological community. Why would I work on acceptance word for word? Why would I be content with myself? But then when you look at these people, they're quite miserable in their actions and their demeanors. They're yelling and they're screaming, and they're certainly not calm. And that is a clear-cut sign of someone's rationale on their explanations of things, their ability to listen, how well they can take information that they don't want to hear, yet don't have to agree with, but they could sit down and have a discussion about them. I had a lot of problems with that. And that leads me up today, which is February 26, 2023. Almost 4 years since OCD became chronic in my life. I have no sensory motor cycle whatsoever. I've been recovered from sensory motor for about 18 months. No fear whatsoever, a willingness for it to come back if needed. I am 95 to 98% better than I've been. There are little tiny tweaks that show up here and there because I'm still early on the journey. I'm not even at 3 full years of putting my video games away, which was May 1st. But I am in a place that I cannot tell you how good it feels to be where I am. We look at someone like Rob. We look at someone that maybe Rob has coached 10 years ago and we think, wow, how do I get there? These people have been working on their perspectives for years. Now, I'm not saying it's going to take you years and years and years and years to recover, but it might take you a couple of years. And it is important to highlight that maybe you get 2-3 years in, and what you do is you so hyper-focus on the progress you haven't made, you don't look back at the things that you have accomplished. And that's okay. And that is my story and why I'm here. I will spend the remainder of my life trying my best to change and spread OCD awareness. I will do everything I can to help people. I will break down myths, which I love to do, such as rumination is something you can stop. Rumination is a symptom primarily of your core fear. I always explain when you wake up in the morning and your brain starts to turn on immediately. Intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges, guilt, shame, and anxiety. Can you stop that? And they say, no. I say, exactly. It needs to be warned. The myth about exposures are the gold standard. They're not. Exposures are not the gold standard. We know they're not. We work with thousands of OCD sufferers. We know the personal experience. Exposures are great, and they matter a lot more than certain things, but they don't mean everything. Unconditional self-life, other acceptance trumps that. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please let me know and talk to you guys soon. And I'm always looking for some good engagement. Have a good one, everyone.